Hello everyone, welcome back to Review and Rate. Today, we're entering into a world of runners and authoritarian rulers. That's right, we're going to keep climbing high areas and disarm these soldiers to talk about Mirror's Edge, a game developed by DICE and released in 2009. If you're a fan of parkour, good art style visuals, and weak fighting, you won't want to miss this review. Now, let's land from high areas and get ready to enter the world of Mirror's Edge. The gameplay of Mirror's Edge is enjoyable overall, but does come with some noticeable issues. Before playing the game, I expected it to focus purely on parkour, so I was surprised to discover that it also includes combat. While the fighting mechanics are better than I initially expected, they still fall short in several areas, which I'll get into later. The game is played entirely in first person, and it offers a wide range of parkour mechanics. You can jump, slide, run, climb, wall run, balance on pipes, slide down ropes, safely land from high falls, and gain momentum by running continuously. You can even bash through doors while sprinting. All of these mechanics come together to form the core of the experience, and they are easily the best part of the game. Executing these movements feels satisfying and fun, especially when you're flowing smoothly through the environment. However, it can become a bit exhausting after long stretches of constant movement. The experience improves when the game introduces new environments and traversal challenges, so some levels start to feel repetitive due to their similarities. That said, I still appreciated how the game attempts to vary the experience to keep the parkour engaging. There are also moments where the pace ramps up significantly, such as when you have to reach a location before a door closes or chase someone before they escape. These sequences add a sense of urgency and provide some welcome challenge. Navigation is generally straightforward. Objectives are clearly presented, and you can often press a button to highlight the correct path forward. Additionally, important objects are marked in red, making it easier to identify elements that are essential for progression. Despite these helpful systems, there are times, especially in more vertical areas, where it can become confusing to figure out where to go next. While I appreciate the need to think and plan your route, it can be frustrating to get stuck with little indication of how to proceed. The chapter selection menu includes a map that shows your position in each level, which is a nice touch. It also tracks collectibles found in each chapter. However, the collectibles themselves don't serve much purpose beyond completion, so they may not appeal to all players. The checkpoint system is another weak point. The game relies entirely on checkpoints for saving, which can be frustrating. While it's good that the game saves at the start of new chapters, it's often difficult to tell when an automatic save occurs. A small white icon briefly appears, but disappears so quickly that it's easy to miss, especially when you're focused on gameplay. The game features both first-person cutscenes and comic-style cutscenes. Personally, I didn't enjoy the comic-style ones, as their visual quality made it harder to stay engaged with the story. This brings me to the combat, which is in my opinion mostly disappointing with a few interesting elements. Disarming enemies and using their weapons can be fun at times, and there are moments where the combat feels satisfying. There's also a specific instance where you can perform a takedown on an enemy, which is a great idea, but it's underused since it only happens once in the game. Unfortunately, despite these positives, combat often feels sluggish and unresponsive. This becomes especially noticeable when facing multiple enemies, where your movements can feel slow and less precise than they should be. There were many times where I managed to take down multiple enemies using melee moves, only to end up dying repeatedly because of how frustrating the combat mechanics can be. When the combat works, it feels satisfying, but when it doesn't, it quickly becomes irritating. The inconsistency is one of its biggest problems. The game does give you the option to avoid combat entirely. You can simply run past enemies instead of engaging them. However, I often chose to fight them so they wouldn't shoot me while I was trying to escape. While the standard soldiers are manageable to deal with, the more aggressive enemies that chase you are extremely annoying. They are difficult to fight effectively, which usually forced me to run away from them rather than engage, simply because of how frustrating they are to deal with. There is also a small boss fight against one of these enemies, and it was easily one of the worst parts of the game for me. It felt frustrating and poorly designed, and I died many times before finally managing to defeat the enemy. Because of how unreliable melee combat feels, I ended up relying heavily on weapons instead. While this isn't necessarily ideal, it's often more effective and easier than using hand-to-hand combat. The game allows you to pick up weapons from enemies, including pistols, shotguns, standard and heavy machine guns, and sniper rifles. Using these weapons can make the game significantly easier, which I actually appreciated. The game also includes difficulty options such as easy, normal, and hard, with harder difficulties unlocking after completing the game on normal. The difficulty primarily affects combat, making enemies more challenging to deal with. Due to the issues with the fighting mechanics, I found myself preferring to play on easy after experiencing the higher difficulties. Lastly, I really like the level design. Even though some sections can feel slightly repetitive, the game rarely feels truly linear. It consistently introduces new areas and traversal challenges, often requiring you to climb and navigate spaces that would be incredibly difficult for a normal person. Let's now talk about the story. The story of Mirror's Edge isn't particularly engaging. In fact, I would say it's overall weak, but does have some interesting ideas. Most of the side characters are unmemorable and lack depth, and the villains are even worse. I found it hard to care about them or their motivations, which made the story less impactful. However, Faith Connors herself is a strong point. I found her character interesting, and I especially liked her interactions with other characters, particularly her sister. These moments added some emotional weight that the rest of the story often lacked. One of the most compelling aspects of the game is its core concept, a surveillance-heavy city controlled by strict authorities, with runners acting as underground couriers operating outside the system. It's a great premise with a lot of potential. Unfortunately, while these ideas are strong, they aren't explored deeply enough. The execution doesn't fully deliver, and the story never really evolves beyond its initial setup. Because of this, it ends up feeling underdeveloped and not as impactful as it could have been. To summarize, the story takes place in a near future, ultra-clean dystopian city where the government tightly controls communication. Surveillance is everywhere, and personal freedom is heavily restricted. To bypass this control, a network of underground couriers known as runners deliver messages physically across rooftops, avoiding digital monitoring. You play as Faith Connors, a skilled runner whose sister Kate Connors is a police officer. When Kate is framed for the murder of a mayoral candidate, Faith sets out to uncover the truth and clear her name. As Faith moves through the city, she becomes involved in a larger conspiracy tied to powerful political and corporate figures. Along the way, she encounters Celeste, a fellow runner who ultimately betrays her, revealing fractures within the underground network. The conspiracy leads to high-ranking officials, including Jackknife, who manipulates events to maintain control over the city and suppress opposition. In the end, Faith exposes the truth, confronts Jackknife, and rescues her sister, dealing a blow to the oppressive system. Let's now talk about the graphics. Mirror's Edge delivers surprisingly good visuals, even by today's standards. Despite its age, the game still looks solid overall, although its older graphical limitations are definitely noticeable. What really makes the game stand out is its distinct art style. Instead of relying purely on graphical power, it uses a clean, minimalist aesthetic with bold colors to create visually striking environments. This artistic approach helps the game maintain its appeal and gives it a unique identity that still holds up well. Character models and enemy designs are also decent, fitting well within the game's overall visual style. That said, the game's visuals are undeniably outdated and don't compare to newer titles, especially the next entry in the series or modern games in general. The limitations become more noticeable in certain situations, such as when looking at characters from a distance, where details can appear rough or poorly defined. Other elements throughout the game also show clear signs of aging. So now, let's talk about the sound. The sound design of Mirror's Edge is excellent overall. The voice acting is somewhat mixed. Faith's voice actor delivers a strong and believable performance, which helps ground her character. However, the performances from other characters feel weaker in comparison and aren't as memorable. The environmental audio is one of the game's strongest aspects. Everything sounds immersive and believable, making it feel like you are truly moving through the city. From footsteps and movement to the ambient sounds of the environment, the audio does a great job of pulling you into the experience. The highlight of the sound design though is the music and soundtrack. Whether it's during intense moments, while running across rooftops, or during the emotional ending, the music constantly stands out. It adds a lot to the atmosphere and enhances the overall experience, making it truly memorable.
That bird ain't playing around. Get your ass to the CEC news building. I'm finding you a way out.
Now let's move on to the final section, which is the replayability. When it comes to replayability, the game offers a few options, but they aren't very engaging for long periods of time. You can take part in speedruns and time trials, where you can replay story chapters with the goal of completing them as quickly as possible. While this can be fun to try on your own, the experience is limited since the servers are down, meaning you can't compete against other players' times. There are also a few additional features, such as viewing the concept art created by the developers, rewatching cutscenes, which I don't recommend since they don't look great, and listening to the soundtrack again. You can replay specific chapters and try different difficulty levels, which can be enjoyable for a while. However, the experience doesn't stay engaging for long, and these are essentially the only replay options available. Now let's summarize everything with my overall impression. Mirror's Edge delivers solid gameplay, a weak story, strong visuals, excellent sound design, and limited replayability options. It's a uniquely designed game that stands out because of how it blends parkour with combat. While it may not be the type of game that keeps me engaged for long periods, I still had a lot of fun playing it. Overall, despite its flaws, it provides a memorable experience, and for that, I would give it a normal score. Here it is. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful review videos. Feel free to share your thoughts on whether the points I've raised resonate with you or if you have a different perspective, and leave your suggestions in the comments about which game you'd like to see reviewed next. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you all for watching.